Hey Postables, you're listening to Deliver Me a Podcast brought to you by Kaycee, Jess, and Cammie. A special thanks to James Jandrisch for letting us use music on our show. Now, grab some yoo-hoo, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, Postables and Hallmarkies. We are super excited to talk about the famous, the most anticipated waiting in your mailbox DVD that comes to you at home by myself with you, starring the lovely and fabulous Kristin Booth and also Aaron Abrams, who plays her the male counterpart in this movie. So, Jess, what did you think about this movie? Real quick, high-level thoughts.
I would definitely say funny and comical. And endearing. That's two words, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was a lot. I laughed. Like, as soon as it started and we started hearing about Romy's story, I started laughing. So It's definitely an interesting style movie.
Yeah, especially the intro is very unusual. And I had been pre-warned about that. Like, the intro's a little different, but get through that and then, it'll be like a normal movie.
Yeah, it's very unique. And there's actually a style that like movies and TV shows have used called a bottle episode, where basically the cast and crew, they try and save a ton of money and they film the TV episode in one location. And I thought that's the one thing that struck me about this movie at home by myself with you is they literally film it in like on one apartment in a hallway. Right.
So I could do that here at home.
I know. But it's a really unique way of storytelling if you think about it, because you didn't need a whole lot of extra scenes or anything.
Right.
So that was super interesting. And then another fun fact about this movie is Chris Booth. And yes, fun fact, if you listen to our interview with Kristin Booth, his name is Kristin Booth too. But he raised $42,000 through a tip jar in order to make this movie.
Which is incredible.
That's absolutely insane. Like, and they have it on the extra features of the DVD of people like just chip in and change into a tip jar.
Oh, I didn't look at those.
Yeah, it's super fun. And I think they have a website where you can see all like a bunch of footage of all of that. So I thought that was also really neat. I mean, it goes to show that if you want to do something and you put your mind to it,
there's a will, there's a way.
That's right. And then final fun fact before we dive into talking about Romy, the main character played by Kristin. If you are an Anne of Green Gables fan, I was looking through the cast and I realized that Bessie is played by Rosemary Dunsmore, who was Catherine Brooke in Anne of Avonlea, and she plays Aunt Abigail in Road to Avonlea. So that completely blew my mind, because Catherine Brooke is super stoic and she's very gruff, and Bessie is not. She is such a character. But it was really fun making that connection, especially for me, because I love Anne of Green Gables, the 1980 series. So anyways, all right. So let's go into Romy's childhood. So like Jess and I were saying earlier, the introduction to Romy's story was very interesting because it's, how would you describe it? Like a cartoon or?
Yeah, it's kind of like a semi-animated, I don't even know. Yeah. It's hard to find the right word for it.
Yeah, you have a narrator and you see Romy as a animation in a way.
Yeah, it's like watching a digital children's book almost.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. But we find out that her mother she has a lot of phobias, I guess, and the mother's always warning Romy, like, you're gonna die if you go outside. And Romy's like, yeah, whatever, Mom.
Like every child.
You're right. And obviously Romy is a normal child, so she goes about her day, and through a series of events, a lot of people close to her die. So we won't spoil it, but these deaths lead to her adulthood phobias. But before we get into adulthood, let's talk about some of our childhood phobias. Did you have any fears as a child, Jess?
I tried to think, and I don't really think I had many specific phobias. I mean, like most kids, I was kind of afraid of bugs and, things like that. But I don't think I had anything like really specific. I was scared of roller coasters for a little bit, but then I finally just went on one. I loved it. And so that quelched that fear, but I was really afraid for, I don't know, a good long while before I finally did it. But I feel like as a child, most of mine was like social fears. Like you could not get me to order my own food as a child. Like it just wasn't happening. Like I had all like kind of social phobias as a kid, but not too many other things. Like I wasn't afraid of heights or anything like that, or yeah.
Okay. As a child, I had a fear of dogs. This is thanks to my father. And this is why I laughed in the beginning, is because Romy's mom is like, don't do this. And she's like basically instilling in the back of Romy's mind a bunch of fear, but obviously Romy doesn't get it until she experiences these certain events. So my dad was an operating room nurse for many, 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 many years until he recently retired. And he had to do surgery on a little girl who was mauled by a dog. And the surgery took like 15 hours. But since that moment, he had been very fearful of dogs. And like anytime we'd be walking, we'd see a dog, he'd be like, don't get close to the dog. And it just instilled a fear of dogs in me until I grew up and realized that dogs are not as scary. I honestly was never around dogs until I was older, like adult older, and I now have a dog. He's a boxer named Carl.
Yeah,
so
now you have one.
I know. I have grown out of my fear of dogs. The other fear that I have always had is a fear of heights. Like I cannot stand at the edge of something, especially if I'm standing. I don't have a fear of heights when I'm in an airplane because I feel safe and secure, but I do have a fear of heights like roller coasters or standing on top of the Empire State Building and looking down type of thing. Like I get sweaty, and I'm getting sweaty like right now.
Just talking about it.
I know, it's so terrifying to me. So those were just some of my childhood fears and some of the outside influences that influenced my phobias, if you will. So yeah. So Romy, as an adult, she doesn't leave her house. And I know you and I are both introverts.
Yes.
How do we feel about not leaving our house?
Most days I mean, we're kind of not leaving our house as much right now anyway.
That's true.
And I'd say for the most part, I don't mind it just because as an introvert, I have enough personal hobbies that I can stay busy, like with art or with books or doing a podcast. But there is a point where like, I don't think I could be in here for, like, I would need to go outside of these walls. I would think I would go crazy after an extended period of time.
Yeah. I mean, at first I was like, oh, okay, she doesn't leave her house. And then I realized Romy legitimately does not step a foot outside of her
cross
apartment.
The line.
She has the little tennis ball when she wants to talk to her neighbor across the hall.
I love that.
Yeah. And at first when I saw that, I was like, what is she doing? And she's like throwing the tennis ball, and it's bouncing back to her just to knock on her door. And I was like, oh, she's like terrified of leaving her apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just going into the hallway, not even like going outside, like just even the hallway.
Right. It's very fascinating. And other fears that Romy has include thunderstorms. boxes, lobsters, kissing, and going outside. Oh, very obscure, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, especially the I think the boxes one, like opening a box is so terrifying because she's like, she knows what she orders. Like, what's gonna be in there?
Right, right. Like, is something gonna pop out at you? Are you scared that you're gonna get your fingers cut or something?
Yeah. And that poor delivery person, because she doesn't go outside, she has to order like everything. And so she literally ends up like, I don't know, almost enhancing her fear because she has to keep getting boxes and boxes that she won't open because she won't go outside and go get it herself.
Right, right. And I gotta say, I love her friend, Erin. I think that was her name, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and how she finally was like, you know what? You're going to conquer your fears, and I'm not going to babysit you anymore. So here's
Tough love.
check, and goodbye. Which I think Romy kind of needed a little bit of tough love. I mean, she had a lot of people as a safety net, and that wasn't helping her conquer any of her fears.
She got very used to kind of living to her personal adaptations to help her with her anxieties without actually really facing them.
Right, right. So a way that Romy copes with like just living inside her little bubble, not going outside, not traveling the world, is she lives vicariously through her travel agency, which is kind of ironic that she has a travel agency. And she gets her stories from Bessie. So Bessie is the one we were talking about earlier who lived across the hall, and she's kind of like a motherly figure, aunt figure type of lady. And what's unfortunate about Bessie, and I feel okay saying this because the movie has been out for several years, so it's no longer a spoiler, but here's your warning. Spoiler alert. Bessie dies unexpectedly. And that just really upsets Romy. And
right, because doesn't she die when Romy like steps out into the hall too? Like it just re-solidifies that fear she has.
Yeah,
there goes another one.
Yeah, every time Romy has stepped outside, somebody has died. Like in her childhood, and now in her, I mean, she didn't step outside, but she stepped outside of her apartment in the hallway, and Bessie passes away. And I'm not gonna lie, we didn't even know Bessie all that long, but I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm like about to cry here because she's so lovely.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it at all.
Not at all. But that just opens the door for the relationship that she has with Bessie's nephew, who is nameless. We just know him as the guy across the hall. And later
does she at one point give him a name? Like she calls him something?
She does give him a name. I don't remember what it was, but she goes through a bunch of different names. Like she's like Matt, Tyler, Jerk. We eventually find out that his name is Guy. Ironically enough, because he is a guy, which is funny. But Guy helps her get over her fears, and they start a relationship of some sort, At first, this is very much an enemy relationship until Romy feels alone and she needs him. So she calls him during a thunderstorm, and she's like trying to play cool and stuff. And he's like, "You're terrified, aren't you?" And he just kind of, even though he's very snarky and kind of a jerk to her, he kind of lightens up, and he really helps her get past her fears, which I thought was an interesting way for her to, find comfort.
Yeah, he really pushes her, but I also think he kind of understood his limits and when she had to make that decision for herself. Because there was that one scene where he was like literally about to drag her out into the hallway and she was like freaking out. And I'm very glad that he did not just like throw her out there, like, because I think, it had to be like her choice and she had to be the one to make that step to get over her fear. But he definitely challenged her to think beyond the walls of her apartment and what was out there for her.
Yeah. And I did appreciate that from Guy, because I mean, he could have easily been played as a jerk, and he kind of was at the beginning. He was kind of a jerk to her in the very beginning, but like you really see that he is very human, just as human as Romy is too. And he's not a, Prince Charming coming to rescue a woman either. I just love the fact that they didn't make him, any of the spectrums of like heroic or like villainous.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you think about their date?
I thought it was really cute, actually. I mean, because she sent him on this basic a scavenger hunt type thing, and he had to go to one place. I mean, I'm sure he had other ideas for how his idea of a date, but it was actually pretty like clever, and it ended up with him coming, ending with her. So it was still felt like a date because they got to be together afterward. But I thought it was very clever.
It was fun. It was very clever and very cute. And when she started, because I was so sure that this was the time she was going to get out and she was going to, like, I don't know, face her fear, go outside, and he's going to show her this grand old world that we have. And when she started that whole, like, she was calling people, I was like, oh no, she's about to stand him up and he's going to be so mad. And I thought that the sequence when we see him going to each location, I thought that was kind of more of a dream sequence. I didn't realize that was actually him experiencing the date.
I didn't either. Yeah.
And so when he walks in and she's sitting at the table and she's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, he walks in. I'm like, oh my goodness, he is going to get so mad at her for standing him up. And he didn't get mad.
Yeah, no.
I love that little twist. It warmed my heart. I was like, oh, he's still with her.
Because I mean, she did put so much thought into it, and I think like even though she wasn't there, I think he like could see the intention and the affection, I guess, behind it.
Yeah. So Guy helps her overcome a lot of her fears. Do you have a favorite scene?
I do.
A favorite situation? Go ahead.
My favorite's the lobster. And specifically, oh shoot, I don't remember what exactly they were doing with it, but she's like staring at this lobster and she's like, I think he just winked at me. I just like died.
I think he was trying to get her to take the lobster to cook it.
Didn't she end up keeping it?
She did, as a pet.
I just loved it. It was just hilarious.
That was so funny. Mine was the kissing one. Just because I was cracking up. So, another spoiler alert, in Romy's childhood, her high school boyfriend, she and her high school boyfriend kiss after she's had a peanut butter sandwich and he dies of anaphylactic shock due to the peanut butter. So, that's why she's terrified of kissing. But I just love the banter because he's like trying to get really close to her and she's like pushing him away. And he basically corners her. And then she's like, do you have any allergies? Are you going to die of anaphylactic shock? And then she's just like, quick peck. And then he's like, let me check my pulse. I think I'm okay. That made me laugh. And Kristin just plays this character so well. Just with like the big eyes and the innocent part of Romy. It's just so fun to see her in this like crazy role.
Yeah.
So at the end of the movie, Guy, who we find out is a very nomadic person, kind of like his aunt, which is interesting. They have that love for travel. He is planning to go away for an extended period of time, and that's the one thing he kind of wants Romy to go along with him. And Romy, you can tell that Romy is struggling at this point. She has a lot of feelings for this guy. For Guy.
For Guy. Yeah.
Romy
and she delayed the trip as long as she could. Like, she took her sweet time, like, part of it was because he wouldn't give her stuff, like, with his name on it or whatever.
Yeah.
But she definitely was trying to slow him leaving.
Yes. And I mean, I think both of them were actually trying to procrastinate that, because he wouldn't give her his name, and she wouldn't book his trip. So, see, like, you got that banter going on. But finally, it's time for Guy to go on his trip, and Romy, at this point, she just cannot do it. She's still terrified, and he leaves. He leaves anyways. Mm-hmm. And that was a big turning point. I think Romy had lost a lot of love from, losing her parents and, like, that first boyfriend and Bessie. And I think, Guy was really a turning point for her to open up her heart and for her to use that as a way to conquer her fears. Mm-hmm. So Romy finally gets the courage to go on the trip. And it's a very lighthearted and very heartwarming, I thought.
Yeah, because isn't it, she gets to, like, the elevator and he was coming back too?
Yes.
That's how he's coming back for her. And so that's the beautiful thing, is, like, neither one of them really, they were both, like, kind of choosing of their own free will to be together. And it wasn't like she felt pressured to leave or him to stay. Like, they both kind of made that conscious decision together, I think, which was really nice.
Yeah. And, I think his return, I don't think he was trying to convince her to come with him. I think he was just turning around to let her know that he was going to be there, even if that meant him waiting for her to step outside of her apartment. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really sweet ending. And I also thought it was unique in the fact that the ending was not a kiss, as a lot of rom-coms are. And that, I honestly thought that was a nice touch, because the story is not about Romy and Guy. The story is about Romy.
Right.
Guy is
it's more about her journey, and he's just there.
He's just the added touch
to help her,
to make it fun. Yeah.
Along that journey. Yeah, it really is a unique movie. I mean, from many of the reasons we said. And I think one of the reasons I really like it is, even though it's a bit of a hyperbole, it's a very exaggerated kind of telling of the story of someone with, like, a really bad anxiety, but it's done in a very lighthearted way. So it's like, you don't really feel, like, depressed about it, like, especially if you know that, like, story, you know anxiety or whatever, but you can really identify with it. Like, for example, like, Romy, you can tell, like, Romy really wants to go outside. She knows, like, just like someone with anxiety knows that those fears are irrational, but you can still see the struggle. But it's also really lighthearted and fun. So you don't feel like it's just, like, really depressing the whole time.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said earlier, like, as soon as I started watching the beginning scenes, I laughed, because I'm like, okay, I could totally see myself being Romy. Like, this certain thing happens, and then I'm, like, absolutely terrified of that.
Yeah.
Definitely a hyperbole and an exaggeration, but I found myself laughing a lot. Like, I can definitely see myself as Romy in that situation. Thankfully, I do go outside, and I don't have a fear of, lobsters. Maybe birds. I do have a fear of birds, but lobsters I do not have a fear of. But yeah, so that was such a cute, fun little movie. And I know this was a different kind of recap, but we have more exciting things to share. As I referenced earlier, this movie has been affectionately called the traveling DVD.
So I watched this movie as part of its journey as a traveling DVD. And so basically, a while back, this movie, I don't know if it just wasn't as well known or made or whatever, but
it was Canadian, so we didn't have access to it in the US.
That's right. So yeah, there was not as easily accessed, and so Mary Beth, a longtime postable, was actually able to get a copy of it. And so since other people really couldn't get it, they decided to just start sending it to each other, and it just kind of grew from there. And so it's traveled almost 17,000 miles. In fact, there's actually a YouTube video that's up that shows its journey. And I believe it's been to around 25 states since its journey began back in 2017, which is crazy. And it's been traveling for 3 years.
3 years.
And it has a little journal that goes with it for like, once you view it, you can jot down some notes of what you thought to Kristin. And so that initial journey is about to end because Mary Beth wants to get that journal to Kristin. Obviously, it's been there 3 years and would love for Kristin to read those comments and just what people have thought. But she's definitely not opposed to sending it around again or helping to coordinate an international one because I know there's a lot of folks in different countries who would also like to see it because so far I believe it's just been in the U.S. So yeah, it's had a long journey and I think it's going to have some more.
Yep, it is about to leave Northwest Florida and head over to somebody in Texas. So that'll be an exciting journey. It came to me from Texas and now it's going back to Texas. So that's fun. All right, so I'm going to spring something on Jess because I like to do that.
Is it trivia?
It is trivia! You know me so well, but it's different. It's a different kind of trivia.
Okay.
It's actually, I think you might do well at this because you are a scientist, so hopefully you are up on your phobia knowledge.
Oh, okay.
All right. What is acrophobia? It is something that I have a very big fear of. Acro.
Heights?
Yes. Acrophobia. Okay. What is hydrophobia?
Fear of water?
Yep. Ding, ding, ding. Yippee. All right. This one's a little harder. Ophidiophobia.
Ophidio?
Yeah.
Like O-P-H?
Ophidio.
I have no idea.
It is the fear of snakes.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like I should have known that.
Yeah. I don't know. All right. How about autophobia?
Fear of cars?
Actually, that was my guess, but that's not correct. I was going to say Romy had a fear of autophobia, but Romy was not afraid of this because she was alone all the time. So autophobia is the fear of being alone.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Technophobia.
Fear of technology.
Yes, something that Oliver O'Toole probably has a fear of. Pyrophobia.
It was like fear of fire?
Yep. You got it.
I'm
Onomatopoeia.
pretty good.
What?
Like I'm actually getting some right. Like I'm doing okay.
This is exciting. Maybe we should do trivia like this all the time.
Yeah.
All right. Onomatopoeia.
So can you spell the first part of it?
Yeah. Onomato. Onomato.
I feel like I've heard of this. I just keep thinking of the word onomatopoeia, which is probably has nothing to do with it. I don't know this one.
It is the fear of names.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe.
Huh.
Yeah. Maybe that's what Guy had. Onomatopoeia. Since he didn't want to disclose his own name.
His name.
All right. Let's see here. I'll do 3 more. These 3 are really weird. I would never have guessed them. So kudos to you if you do. And to any postable out there listening. Okay. Electorophobia. Electorophobia. Phobia. Alektoro.
No idea.
That's your hint.
Fear of birds?
Close. Fear of chickens.
I appreciate the sound effects.
All right. Second to last is pagonophobia.
Pagonophobia. Fear of pigs. I don't know.
I mean, fear of beards?
Beards?
Beards? Maybe that's what Cammie has, and she doesn't like you. She's team
clean shaven.
All right. And then the last one, which is very timely for me because of the weather outside, but tonitrophobia.
Fear of thunderstorms?
Fear of thunder. Yay! Woo! You did well. You did well. See,
I finally feel like I passed one a little bit.
Yes. Well, it has been so much fun talking about At Home by Myself with you, starring the fabulous, the wonderful, talented Kristin Booth, aka Shane McInerney from Signed, Sealed, Delivered.
Not to be confused with Chris Booth.
Yes.
Who is also Kristin Booth.
Yes. You can hear all about that little inside joke on our interview with Kristin Booth. I believe it dropped early June, so go back and listen to it. She talks a little bit about At Home by Myself with You and just the fact that she and Chris Booth have the same name. So that's always a fun little trivia fact. If you're interested in learning more about At Home by Myself with You and the traveling DVD, be sure to reach out to Mary Beth Rudzinski. She is all over Twitter, and you'll be able to find her. Just look up hashtag traveling DVD, or you can find the hashtag At Home by Myself, and you should be able to find more information there. So I'm going to be wishing this DVD well adventure as it travels on from here. All right. Have a great one, guys. We'll see you guys next week when we talk about more things Signed, Sealed, Delivered. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Deliver Me a Podcast. If you want to know what's going to happen next week, be sure you are following us on Twitter at Deliver Me a Pod and on Instagram at Deliver Me a Podcast. We also have a merch store where you can buy tons of post-post things for you and your friends. We'll see you next week.